Hello, this is my sermon for February 7th. The gospel lesson for this day is Mark 1, verses 29 through 39. I'm going to read it right here, but if you want to pause the video and then go grab your own Bible, you certainly can. It's also a little chilly outside, which is why I have this jacket on. Here is the gospel. As soon as Jesus and his disciples left the synagogue, they entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now, Simon's mother in law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her. She began to serve them. That evening at sunset, the people of Capernaum brought to Jesus all who were sick or possessed with demons. And the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place. And there he prayed. Then Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." He answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also. For that is what I came to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in the synagogues and casting out demons. The gospel of the Lord. Please join me in prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Jesus is back at it this week in Mark's Gospel. In the passage, which is just 11 short verses, Jesus heals Peter's mother-in-law, who is sick with a fever. He heals many people who are sick with diseases or afflicted by demons. He does not permit those demons to speak, which I'll get to later in the sermon. That's sometimes called the messianic secret. Ooh. And he goes to towns and regions throughout Galilee. He also takes time himself to pray. There is an awful lot that happens in a few short phrases and sentences. This is typical of Mark's gospel. Mark packs a lot of action into his gospel. We see Jesus, who is active at work. He is doing things. It starts off when Jesus's disciples tell him that Peter's mother-in-law is laid up with a fever. And it says that Jesus went and cured her of her fever and lifted her up. This is wonderful imagery. First off, if someone is sick, if someone is unwell, in that time and in ours, you would not touch them. You would keep a distance. Peter's mother-in-law must have felt like a pariah. People would have been keeping social distance from her. This is the first time in the Gospels that we have Jesus acting to one who would have been considered beyond the bounds of society, who would have been isolated, who would have been separated from other people. But this will not be the last time. Jesus cures what is wrong, cures the fever of Peter's mother-in-law. He restores her. He restores her to life and to community. She responds by wanting to serve. Indication isn't necessarily clear, but the sense, the easiest guess is that she was wanting to be a good hostess, that she was wanting to, provide a meal, a snack, a repast for Jesus and his disciples. Jesus, because of his nature, because of who he is, because of why he is here, has restored Peter's mother-in-law to health. Jesus, because of his nature, restores that. Her response is service. Her response is to take care of Jesus and his disciples. Her response to his gracious and loving act is to share that love. That evening, we are told, as the sun went down, people from Capernaum brought the sick, those with diseases, those with demons, brought them outside the bedside, outside the house where he was staying. Why would they do it after the sun went down? Well, in Jewish communities, days begin at sunset and end the following sunset. I am delivering this sermon on Saturday, February 6th, or at least that's when I'm recording it. In a Jewish context, when the sun sets at about 6 o'clock tonight, that would begin the next day. Jesus was teaching in the synagogue just before this, presumably on a Sabbath. So people, when the Sabbath is over, are bringing their loved ones who are sick with diseases or who are afflicted with demons because they want Jesus to take care of them. And Jesus cures diseases, he casts out demons, and he does not allow those demons to speak. First off, just to note that Jesus is not just about the talk. He is about restoring people to wholeness and community. Jesus wants to tell people about the kingdom, and indeed, that's going to occur in Mark's gospel. But first, Jesus wants to give people signs of what life in the kingdom is like. And life in the kingdom has a wholeness, has a wholeness of, let's just back that up a little, has a wholeness of health, of community, has people that are restored to rightness with God, restored to rightness with each other, restored to rightness in their own bodies. He also doesn't allow the demons to speak. The demons know who he is. And in Mark's gospel, we're going to see a number of times, more than in any of the others, Jesus trying to encourage people to not call him the Messiah, to not share who he is. Jesus saying to demons, whoa, hush, don't share it. That is called the Messianic secret. And our best guess is that Jesus's disciples and others made assumptions of who the Messiah would be, and that Jesus did not want to live into those assumptions. We certainly know through history, through people who proclaim themselves Messiah before or after Jesus, that it was common for people to say, to look at the Messiah as a military leader, as a monarch, as a ruler, as a general. It would be Simon Bar Kokhba, who leads a revolt in the 130s, for instance, has some elements of proclaiming that. Jesus as Messiah is different from those expectations and from our expectations. And so one of the ideas is that Jesus, wants people to know him for who he is, rather than their assumptions of who he should be. After that, and man, this is, like I said, been a lot. After that, Jesus goes to a deserted place by himself to pray. Even though Jesus is the Messiah, even though Jesus can cure the sick, even though Jesus has already, this early in Mark's gospel, confronted demons, confronted the devil, confronted diseases, Jesus needs some time for himself. So what am I to say about all of that? What am I to say? What is going to have meaning with that? First off, as signs of the kingdom, Jesus is restoring people. Restoring people is making them well. He's making them well in body, making them well in mind, making them well in spirit. If I'm being honest, I don't really know what the demons are. I don't, when I think of demons in today's world, I think of things like depression and anxiety. I think of things like addiction. I think of things like anger. I think of things, all sorts of different things like that. Later on in the gospel, we'll encounter someone who's clearly epileptic, and that's described as a demon. If I think about a demon, I think of something that is a brokenness, that is a recurring brokenness between us and God, between us and each other. And I think that the gospel writer of Mark called that a demon. And as for what it is and what it means, I'm not quite sure, but that's the language that we have from them. I think of Jesus trying to be an example for us, not just of right living, but for how we should live with each other. He is breaking down the barriers, physical, spiritual, emotional, that separate people one from each other and one from God. And I think Jesus is encouraging us to break down those own barriers. Jesus also takes time to pray. He could be doing this as an example that we should take some Sabbath time, that we should take some rest time, that our own, that there are times that all of us should go on a spiritual journey. Or he could be doing this because he is human too, because he is born of Mary. He might be taking a break because we all need a break. He might be doing it not just as an example, but because he needs time. Jesus is also not content to just, do his service just in Capernaum. He says to his disciples, we need to keep going. He is not content to sit on his laurels, but he wants to go and share the message of God's love and mercy with all those that he encounters. Jesus doesn't want to just stay in one town. He knows that the message needs to go out. He knows that there are calls for service, calls for love, calls for understanding of the kingdom, both here and there. May you know God's love. May you know God's service. May it resonate in your lives. Amen.